very good evening, good morning to all present, respected Vice Chancellor Sir, Professor PJ Mahato Sir, and all our all my senior esteemed colleagues, dear students, and of course, Rashmi ma'am. Once again, welcome to our university and welcome to this interaction. Let's begin from the beginning. And I'm sure we have so many young students in here. We would like to hear about how your childhood was and what presence of books was there in your childhood.
Thank you, Stuti, and a very good morning to all of you. Louder? Oh, great, lovely, lovely. Because I keep telling everyone, you know, I am 50, a little over 50 maybe, but the kind of loudness I have in my voice, I think y'all should have in yours too. Y'all are all below 30 now, so have a louder good morning in you. Have a greater cheer in your good morning. Once more, can we have a good morning? Oh, lovely,
That's nice.
Lovely. So yes, Trudy just asked me about how my childhood was. I would just like to correct you, Shruti. My childhood is
Yes.
Yes. My childhood is.
I sit corrected.
Yeah, because, you know, for someone who is passionate about writing for children, reading for children, I think I have stopped growing out of my childhood. My adolescence is waiting for me, but I said, okay, thodi der aur. So, yeah, we used to read a lot of books, but a part of my childhood was in Shillong. So this is what I was telling one of the Japanese publications a couple of days back. They wanted an article from me. So I was telling them it's about Shillong's cherry blossom, it's about Shillong's plum blossom. You know, they're more or less like the cherry blossoms from afar, but they're white. And they kind of brought some kind of magical reality into my imagination. And the rapids of Sohra, Cherrapunji, the caves there. In fact, all of these, you know, there's a myth, there is folklore, there is magic in all of these, which probably somewhere influenced my inclination towards fantasy fiction, fiction writing. Those days, and even now, I think it's a very nice and honorable term to be called fiction writing. But you know what I feel deep inside? And this is just between you and me. Don't let this go out of the hall. I think I just tell good fibs and make people believe them. Don't let it go out of the hall. I just tell lies, that's all. And lies in a way that I try to weave it through reality. So people don't know where the reality ends and where the fiction or the lies begin. So this is how, you know, beginning at the beginning. And of course, there used to be books like Kenneth Grahame, Wind in the Willows, and there is this very cute little animal storybook, Bill Badger. Yes, Bill Badger, I think, was written by Dennis Hodgson. What was it? Dennis Hodgson Pitford. Yes. And then there was also The Secret Garden. So those were the books I really loved reading, and I think they were books which were very close to nature, and growing up in Shillong was very close to nature. So this is how it is, Tuti.
That must have been a very beautiful childhood for sure. And that is, of course,
yes.
And that beautiful childhood is continuing,
It still is continuing.
So ma'am, when was the first time that you wrote something? Wrote something. When was the first time that you wrote something?
Okay, the first time I wrote something was, it was a poem. I was in class 4, and I had written it at the back of my rough copy. And there was some explanation going on in class. Don't try that. So I had actually finished my classwork, and there was some explanation still required, and I thought I was really smart and I didn't need the explanation. So I started scribbling the poem. And you know, like always, there are kids who just tip off the teacher. Yes. So I said, okay, we never used to call ma'am. We used to call miss. Either it's a miss or a sister. Yeah.
So if I may ask, which school was that?
This was in St. Mary's.
St. Mary's. Okay.
Yeah, this was in St. Mary's. And Shillong, of course, my early childhood was there. I was in Pipe Out School in Shillong. So this was in St. Mary's Convent in Guwahati. So when I started scribbling, you know, the teacher said later, she called me and she said, you never do it again. And she said, afterwards, when she read through the poem, she said, but never mind, it's a good poem. You continue to write, but not in class.
Of course. So that is also the message for our students in here, that continue to be creative.
Precisely. Yes. You continue to be creative. Please keep writing, but not in class.
Where the teacher is teaching.
Yes.
Okay, so from the 4th standard onwards, I suppose the creative juices were flowing, and after this, like, do you remember when were you first published? Because I'm sure after that first poem, other poems also followed. But so, do you have like any published poems from back then, or?
Yeah, I think the first poem was published in the Telegraph. Those days, I think the graffiti was there, and the poems were selected by Jayant Mahapatra. So 2 of my poems got selected there. And then, of course, there had been breaks in between exams, and my mom passed away when I was in class 10, just after my 10th boards. So, you know, there are breaks in between, but more tragedy, more passion, and a lot of changes in life bring about a more mature you and a more creative you. We'll come to that later.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yes. So now, ma'am, the first book of yours that was published is Wings.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately I think is no longer in print. So we would actually like to know a little bit about Wings, and also how challenging it is for the first book to be published.
Yes.
The writing and publishing for that matter.
Publishing, yes. Writing is not really a problem, actually. Yes, it is. The publishing is a challenge. Those days it really was a challenge. But I think now things are really very different. You can go for Kindle Direct Publishing. You can have your own publishing. But the challenge now is how you promote your book, how you get people to read about your book. And I'm sure a lot of you, in fact, I read so many of your writings, you know, here and there. I have been judging some of your competitions. I have been judging your debates. So I know you kids have so much of potential than you. And this is what I wanted to tell you. Y'all should not think of publishing. Y'all just should think of writing. Y'all should just think of going on, giving vent to your creativity. And another thing is, don't wait for it to get acknowledged. Just do your bit, and things will happen, trust me. There have been books and manuscripts lying with me for years together, but when you know you believe in your work, things just happen, trust me. I would again say trust me and keep your creativity flowing, honestly.
Yes, I suppose it's like what they call chiseling the pen.
True, absolutely.
Okay, so your next book, which also won you the Sahitya Akademi in 2016, is His Share of Sky. And when I read that book, I could actually feel the warmth oozing out of the pages, because Barsaw's experience, please forgive my pronunciation, Barsaw's experiences, they may come across as light-hearted, but they are very deeply poignant, I felt. So we would really like to hear something about his share of sky, and whose share of sky is this?
She hit me bang there. She wants to know whose share of sky it is. Yeah, any guess? Any guess from anyone? Not from Pranami if she is here. Any guess whose share of sky? Barsao is a 10-year-old boy.
Yes.
Yeah, and these are a collection of short stories, interrelated short stories, based on Barsao's childhood. So, any guess? Anyone? Oh, who said that? I should have said not Jasmine. Yes, my husband's. And of course, my husband isn't 10-year-old, but these are stories from his 10-year-old childhood. And they have been difficult childhood. They have had difficult times. So yes, through that childhood, because he had some creativity in him, because he had passion in him, he made it to the Indian Administrative Service, and this is it. Yeah.
Yes, and I think it also sends such a positive message, the positive that whatever the adversities are, life triumphs. And I think this is something that when we read your books, like whether it is His Share of Sky or even the writings in Mosaic, for example, or even Looking Beyond, also Looking Beyond, I'm sorry, we find this, this warmth and also this triumph of life that that is how I have kind of read it. So we would also actually like to know a bit more about Mosaic and Looking Beyond.
Okay, thank you, Stuti. Mosaic is emotions, living emotions of people, of relationships. And in one particular story, there are two characters, two old men. One is deaf and the other has no teeth. So these are, both have passed away, God bless their souls. One was based on my father, and the other one was based on my father-in-law. So the rest of it is, of course, fiction. But yeah, and I didn't want to feel sad about the fact that one couldn't hear and the other had no teeth. So the story is made that way. So when I read it to them, they also felt good about not being able to hear and not having teeth. So this is about, the triumph of being deaf, the triumph of having no teeth, and the triumph of being able to carry your set of teeth in your pocket. So whenever there is something nice to chew, a piece of chicken leg, he would bring out his teeth, put it in his mouth, chew it, and then wash his set of teeth and put it back in his pocket. How many of us have the privilege of doing that? Yeah.
That's so interesting, actually. And after this, of course, you transitioned to novels. So from Bloodstone, your debut novel, which also has been widely, has won rave reviews, if I have to say, from readers and critics alike. Before we actually go to discussing a bit about your novel, I would like to know, and I'm sure a lot of us would like to know, how was the transition from short stories to novel?
Yeah, this is one thing, when I used to write short stories, I used to think, my God, the word count is almost over, but I still have so much more to write. I still wanted to describe so many things. So I think this is how the transition gradually began. And the first draft of the novel always looks like an extended short story. Then you start putting in details. So yeah, this is how the transition is. And I think someday I might have a transition back into the short story. So again, I will have to cut down on the descriptions and the details. But yeah, it's always, life is always on the move. Change is constant. So the change from novel to short story to novel. But I think I don't have the capacity and I don't have the intelligence, I would say, to write poems once more, because poems need a lot more caliber and a lot more high intelligence to write, to decode and interpret. Yeah, I'm more into telling lies, honestly.
If they are lies, they are beautiful lies that mesmerize everyone. And so, could we have the picture of of Bloodstone? So, as we can see here, this is of course the Kamakhya temple, and Bloodstone is an adaptation of the very famous Kamakhya, the legend that is associated with Kamakhya, or should we call it, or is it your take on this?
No, this.
Your version of
my version of Bloodstone is, I suppose all of you know why and what Kamakhya is all about, and for those who don't know, there is the story about Sati being disintegrated by Vishnu's disc, and the yoni, the genitals, had fallen in the Nilachal hills, and the Hindus believe that once a year the organ bleeds. So this is when the Ambubasi happens, and that particular yoni, which is of course stone now, is the bloodstone. And what I feel particularly is, whenever I had gone a number of times to the temple, and which seemed pretty controversial, a number of publishing houses had rejected because of this, because it was pretty controversial, that they are supposed to give a piece of red cloth, angoda it is called, stained by the divine blood. But when I got the piece of cloth, I saw that it was like any other red piece of cotton cloth, and there actually, very scientifically and technically, is no bleeding. But whatever happens during that time, yes, I think it is because it is the monsoon season then, and Kamakhya is atop the hills, so there is a lot of mud coming in from the hills.
Red.
So yes, so the water turns red. And there probably will be some chemical reaction due to the rains and the flora and the rocks there, which probably will give the ruddy burgundy kind of tinge to the water. But in all likelihood, which is why mine is a fiction, I don't say it as a statistical report or a confirmation that it is not blood. But I feel it is not blood, I feel. And I say that certain things happen, this is all fiction in the book, and which takes you through the work, and 102 years from now, the stone will stop bleeding. And when the stone stops bleeding, there will be no Ambubasi fair. And if there is no bleeding, if there is no Ambubasi, so the question is, will the Kamakhya still be the shrine that it is? And once again, this is just between you and me, don't let it go out of the hall. I said 102 years from now, because by then, even if someone wants to sue me, I will not be around. Yes. So these are small tricks when you write fiction novels. Save your skin first.
Yeah, and but I'm sure a lot of research must have gone into the writing of this book.
Yes.
So that is something I am also personally very keen to know. What kind of research went into the, I will not say making, but into the creation of this book?
Creation of, yes, research in the sense, I have woven Nepal into this story. So I have spoken to a lot of people from Nepal and grassroots people. I didn't want to speak to anyone who is academically inclined or who has written researched papers, because again, theirs will be in a typeset. Someone somewhere would already be doing something, and theirs would not be at the grassroots and at the folk level. So I spoke to quite a few people belonging to Nepal and still having their roots in Nepal, about how they still celebrate their folk traditions, how they go about their lifestyles in the rural areas. And then sometimes I also made them call up their families in Nepal, rural Nepal, and maybe sometimes video call as well, whenever network was possible there in Nepal. I mean, because it is rural Nepal I'm talking about. So whenever it was possible, I would make video calls to them and see their terrain, their places. In fact, the research went to such an extent that one of my friends, she calls me up and she says, Rashmi, I couldn't find Telebham. Telebham is the village, the hamlet where the story is set. I couldn't find Telebham on Google Maps. Is it that remote? I said, yes, it is very remote. It is right inside my mind. Google won't reach there.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's so interesting, actually. That must have been the impact on the reader, that the reader went on to actually look for the actual
on
village.
Google Map. And I think many of you will know her if I tell the name, but I will not.
I was about to ask who she is,
Yeah,
but
I
I
will
shall not. Okay, so how long did this novel really take from its inception
yes.
to its coming into print in book form?
Yeah, writing part took some time really, but it sat around for many more years because publishers were not really accepting it, because they thought it was controversial. They thought half the men would be discouraged to read something about a menstruating shrine. And I'm talking to you because I know you all are matured people and your level of thinking is very high. That's why I can openly talk to you like this, which I couldn't with probably my publishers and some of my editors. And that was one thing. And after every reject, when I came back to the novel, I could see I matured. So when I read through, I liked to edit the work more and more. And in the process, somebody told me, matured, when a manuscript sits with you for long, it gets pickled. So whenever pickle sits for long, you sun it and you add more ingredients to it. I think when it actually comes to the table on your plate, it tastes so much better than the day you actually put the pickles in the jar. So this is a very nice metaphor, I thought, And so this is why for Bloodstone, I went into Kindle Direct Publishing. Because I believed in my work and I wanted people to read about it, what the Kamakhya legend is really about. And of course, I haven't touched the legend. I let it be. I'm just working around. Yes, I'm just telling lies around that legend. And that's why I have been telling you, believe in yourself and don't stop your creativity, even if there is no acknowledgement. Because when I published Bloodstone, Legend of the Last Engraving on my own, in 2 months' time, it went on to rank 40 in Amazon. And I am not someone who would go from door to door, promoting the book. So I think just a few friends read and they passed on the word. And if you have good reviews on Goodreads, and Goodreads reviewers are pretty honest. Yes. They can kill a book. They can make a book.
But the reviews have been wonderful, actually, on Goodreads also.
Yes. I think they have given me 5-star and 4-star reviews. So, yeah.
Ma'am, before I was just thinking, as you talked about a manuscript being pickled, it's encouraging because one of my own, it's in Assamese, of course, manuscripts have been kind of lying, and sometimes, of course, I would feel it's not happening. I would feel a little kind of.
You should make it happen yourself.
Yes. That I am going to. That's what I'm thinking right now. That I am going to make it happen for sure. Thank you for that. Okay, now after this, of course, I'm extremely piqued about your forthcoming novel. But before that, there are other facets to you also, ma'am, Rashmi Narzary, the creative person, that I think we need to definitely touch upon. One, of course, is Rashmi Narzary, the translator, the acclaimed translator, and you have translated Dr. Bhabendranath Hoykya, Hanta Histo, Hristo Pusto Mohadusto, as calm and quiet, fat and robust, very mischievous, and also the short stories of Hoykya, Shrinkhall, and other stories. So Shrinkhall is the chain. Sure. So I have two questions in mind on this. One, how has been the experience of translating Bhabendranath Hoykya, who himself is a versatile genius? And secondly, how do you negotiate the translation of distinctively the idiomatic expressions, for example, or metaphors, or of the Assamese into English? So.
Yeah, that was a huge challenge. In fact, when I was Hunter Histo was not exactly a translation study. It is I don't know if there is anything in English called transcreation.
Transcreation.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I don't know about English because I am not a student of English, and that's why I repeatedly asked Dr. Sahitya's wife. I call her Preeti Jethai. Jethai, are you sure you want me to do this? Jethai said, yes, I want you to do this. So I took on the work, but it was really challenging. And there were, like she said, idioms and stuff. How do you translate it into English? Literal translation is not at all possible. And in Shrinkhall as well, there were things like hero bupai. Now, how do I translate hero? There is no word equivalent in English. Even if I put ho there, that impact, that depth, the love that prevails in the Assamese language, when you say hero bupai, that doesn't translate into English. So these are little slips, you have to give. I mean, they are lost in translation. You have to give it, because you are hoping to take your work to a wider audience, to wider readers globally, and you're translating the major part of the work into one language. You will have to give away a few things. So that, I think, will always be there. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And yes, if I may add, Rashmi Soikya, it's been some years. She said that they really loved your translation. As you were talking, it just came to my mind.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Jethai was particularly very happy, with your translation. And of course, it's very natural because
I don't know, because I hope I did justice to such a great work.
Yes, I've read this book. I have actually this chain I have with me. So
Shrinkhall.
Shrinkhall. Yeah. You're also an editor, ma'am. And
yes, I try to be.
Yes, and you've been involved with projects of UNICEF as well as Panchayati Raj projects. So as an editor, because I'm sure there will be children amongst us here who would also be thinking of being editors someday in the future. So as an editor, what is it that you, or what are those aspects that you really prioritize on?
Simplicity of language. You target your readers in such a way that they are not all into high funda English knowledge. I take that set, because I am not into high funda English language. So I think, okay, because I don't understand this, maybe my readers will not understand this. So I go in for very simple language, short sentences, and just make it correct, and just see that there is no misunderstanding, simple slips like having for dinner and having over for dinner. There are two different things. I want to have you for dinner. That implies something else. Maybe you wanted to imply, I want to have you over for dinner. So these are the little things that an editor needs to look into. And the rest is all, just let it happen. whatever makes it sound good to your ears. And whatever, when you're reading, shouldn't feel like you're reading through a rumble strip. It should feel like you're reading through the flyover. You're zooming. So just make it feel like that, and you're a good editor. That's all.
The lucidity, you mean?
The lucidity. There, see, she teaches English. She quickly got the word lucidity, but I couldn't. I gave you an example of rumble strips and flyovers and whatnot.
That is the specialty, isn't it? Like, that is the uniqueness or specialty, and that's your greatness also, by the way.
She's been kind. She's been kind too. Thank you both.
Okay, ma'am, now we come to your forthcoming novel.
Yes.
You also have a couple of, I think we can talk about your, the Yomu, isn't it? Okay, let me also add, some of ma'am's works are being translated to some other languages of the world.
Vietnamese.
Particularly Vietnamese. So this is such a wonderful thing, isn't it, for us, that we have ma'am here. And she's also, and she is, I think, the only person from India.
No. Can I just elaborate on
this?
Yes. This is the
inter-country
project.
Literary project.
Yes, from it's called the Yomu. It's initiated by the Japan Foundation. And here, I think from India, only 5 people were picked. So they have happened to be bestowing the graces on me from Eastern India, from Northeast India. I am the one. And the story that I had put in, I don't know what they liked about it, but they are planning. They have already translated into Vietnamese, and they're planning for some more Southeast Asian languages. But that's another piece of lie. No, not about the translation into Vietnamese, about the story that is going to be translated into Vietnamese. Yeah.
Okay. You've also mentored young minds, if I may say, in projects like the Zuban Sasakawa, very prestigious Zuban Sasakawa project, and other such projects. So would you kindly share your thoughts on that? How's that experience actually?
Mentoring, actually, I benefited more than the mentees because they had so much of things, so much of ideas. We were actually ideating when we sat down in the hall. I would just give them props, and they came up with such magnificent ideas. So it was like, I don't know who came back mentored, me or them. And they were brilliant children, and I think one of the rounds we had here as well. Okay. That was in 2017. All right. Okay. That was for Katha. But the Zuban Sasakawa Peace Foundation, that is also an Indo-Japanese venture, and that was actually for doctoral scholars, research scholars. So they were asked to do theses and documenting the folk culture and situations in the Northeast that had not been promoted and not been documented so far. So a whole lot of topics were included there: insurgency and sidelines by the central government, a whole lot of things. But as usual, I always opted for the folklore section. And they were amazing researchers, amazing work. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So now we actually come to an unfinished search. Mm-hmm. An unfinished search straddles 3 countries, which of course once upon a time was one subcontinent. Mm-hmm. So it straddles India, Bangladesh and Pakistan. And we would like to hear a bit about the book. It is still not yet published. It's a forthcoming book of ma'am's. And also we would like to hear a bit, as in if you do a little bit of reading from your book, if you're okay with it, then so first we would like to hear a bit about your book, An Unfinished Search, and then of course we'll hear ma'am read a passage actually from her book, from her forthcoming book.
Okay. So can you imagine you are sitting here on the same chair in the same hall, but somehow you happen to be called a student of Royal Global University this moment. Next moment, you are called a student of the Cotton University. And the next moment, you are called a student of the Dibrugarh University. But all along, you are sitting on the same chair in the same hall. This precisely is the theme of An Unfinished Search. One particular person born in 1932 remains in the same village, in the same house, but the land, that particular piece of land, along the same river, along the same latitudes and longitudes, travels from India to Pakistan and finally to Bangladesh. And when it is Pakistan, it was right after independence, it was called the East Pakistan. Yeah. So at the same time, this particular person is born out of wedlock. So he doesn't know if he is a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or Buddhist or whatever. He doesn't know his parents. So his entire life is in search of his identity and in search of the place he might like to belong to. But no land accepts him when he is alive. And even in his death, he lies in the Indo-Bangladesh international border in Sudarkandi. I'm sorry. Sudarkandi is in Karimganj. So that is the border. That is the border. So this is the story. And in between, of course, this particular person, he sees, his family sees the traumas of India's freedom struggle, the partition, the World War. And then, of course, there is a particular thing, a particular event. It was Operation Searchlight, which the Pakistan military had strategically planned to erase all kinds of Bengali uprising against their autocracy. So this particular character had to face the trauma of all of these as he is still searching for his identity. And this is it. So, but he dies without actually coming to know of it, and this is why it is an unfinished search. The book is has already been taken up. I hadn't even been completed through it when it was taken over by Pepperan Books and Media of the United Kingdom, and they are global distributors. So they will be bringing it out, and they hope to bring it out in sometime in around August or September 22. So fingers crossed. Thank you. Thank you.
That's so interesting because the subtitle is also One Man, One Village, Three Countries. Mm-hmm. So, ma'am, let's have, I think we need a bigger round of applause for ma'am for this book. And
Thank you. Thank you.
And now we would really love to hear you read a passage from your book. And I think this is the first time also that you're reading or letting the world know about something about this book.
Yes, exactly. I feel so privileged to come and break the news to you all. Because so far it had just been, the announcement wasn't really public. But I think Dr. Singh and my publisher had been in direct touch with each other. And before I knew, I think they had already arranged this thing. So I was just told later, hey, come on, girl, go get there, talk to them about your book. So here I am. So can I read?
Yes, of course.
May I?
We need a bigger yes, come on.
A bigger yes. All right. And even if I fall back somewhere, please feel free to raise a hand and tell me, okay? I'm accustomed to being, snapped in between because I have kids at home, a husband at home, and 2 dogs. The third one passed away
recently, yes.
Back. Yes.
I was thinking about it when Joynal said.
Yeah. So... Asman. Asman is the name of the character. And the book has names like this, which which signifies infinity. At the same time, the names don't say whether it is a Hindu name or a Muslim name. So the names are like Asman, Badal, and Anjan. Anjan is the first of the 3 generations of the Hazrat Kandis, and Hazrat Kandi is actually the name of the imaginary village. And the man, because he had no name, he was known as Anjan of Hazrat Kandi. So when he goes to one of the British supervisors, he calls him Asman Hazrat Kandi, and then the name stuck, Asman Hazrat Kandi. So here I am reading out a passage from the book. Asman ran a hand down his grey beard as he looked up at the skies. You know what Dadajan had said to me that day, Huzur, standing there on the hillock? And this hillock is actually indicating the Maligarh War Memorial. This is a real thing. This is not part of my fiction. The Maligarh War Memorial is a real thing, and it is situated in Karimganj of Assam. And the actual site of the graveyard has been slightly deviated in discussion with both the border security forces and the Indian government, so that the grave and the place where these soldiers rest does not fall in a no man's land. So the story revolves around the Maligarh War Memorial, the graveyard of the mutiny, the martyrs of the Sepoy mutiny, which took place elsewhere in India, had a shoot-off in Karimganj. So this particular mutiny was also of 1857. So the story comes down from 1857, ending in 2017, when the Maligarh War Memorial celebrates the 160th anniversary of the Battle of Latu. So that many years I had to travel back and forth in time. Okay. So this is the hillock. What did he say? The soldier asked. He said, Asman. This is Asman's Dadaji talking to him. Asman, now on, where we have been living is no longer India. It is now Pakistan. And Huzur, by Huzur, Asman is referring to the soldier. I had asked him if we would have to move away to some other place, if we were shifting house. Then Dadajan had said, No, Asman, we will remain where we are. It is only the nations that have come and gone by us. Our address has changed, not even by a street, a village, or a district, but by a country. By a country, Asman, by a whole country, even though we remain just where we are. The same skies above us, the same ground we walk on, the same Duni streamlet that shall continue to flow into the Sonai river that meanders through the land, Asman, the same village of Hazrat Kandi, the same district of Sylhet, and yet it will be a different land, a different country. Asman Hazrat Kandi thought for a while before speaking again. I remember my Dadajan's voice choking when he said all of that, Huzur. He had a lump in his throat which he didn't want me to see and had a bigger burden on his chest. But I saw both the lump and the burden. As the nations changed again and again, that lump and that burden started to grow on me. And now, because Asman has also gone through one of the biggest and saddest and most catastrophic famines that had hit Sylhet, that was in 1943. So this particular passage is about that famine. Once when Asman saw large birds hovering in the skies towards the north, he had said, Dadajan, look, they are almost like airplanes. The boy was thrilled but was scared too. He ran behind his Dadajan, still looking up at the sky. Those are vultures, Asman, his grandfather said, looking up. How sinister they could make even a brilliantly azure sky appear. There must be corpse somewhere below there. How do you know, Dadajan? Because vultures feed on the dead. Dead cattle? In these times, Asban, who knows, it might be dead cattle or dead humans as well. And the still of the afternoon would be broken by the nerve-wracking squawk of birds of prey, piercing through the scorching heat and scanning for prey on the earth that cracked up like the heels of uncared-for, hard-working feet. Each morning, Firdaus took the trowel and wandered off along the river at the back in search of edible roots and arum. The soles of her feet began to chafe and her nails grew dark and brittle because there was no grains, there was no roti, there was no rice, so they had to go in search of whatever they could dig out. One morning, as she was digging out some tapioca by the river, she saw another woman, haggard, unwashed and hungry, clawing among the weeds and growth for scrap to eat. When she saw Firdaus and the few tapioca near her, the woman suddenly darted forward, picked up the tapioca and fled. "You swine, you thief!" Firdaus shouted and cried as she gave chase. The woman turned to look once and continued to run, laughing hysterically. "Give those back, you bitch, those are mine, for my Abbajan and my Ammajan." Tears rolled down Firdaus's face while her own stomach wobbled with the water she filled it with to feed the pangs of hunger. Her heart raced, and for that one fleeting moment, hunger and rage called in the devil into her mind. She picked up such speed as is fueled only by desperation and ran across the scraggly field and hurled the trowel at the woman who was by now slowing down. Firdaus's hijab fell from her head, but she could not be bothered to stop and pick it up. Her Ammajan and Abbajan meant more to her than her hijab. She trampled over it as she ran. The trowel found its mark. It hit the woman on the head and she screamed and fell to the ground, but as quickly she got up and staggered away, leaving the tapioca scattered on the ground. Now it was Firdaus who laughed hysterically. That's what the famine and hunger did to people those days. And then there is another short passage which actually deals about how once upon a time in those same places, in that same area, the communities, people from different faiths, different beliefs lived together, but then there was enmity after independence among them. So I come to this. Badal never knew what it felt like to be struck by lightning. But he thought it must have felt like what he felt at that moment. Never in their wildest nightmares did any of the Hazrat Kandis and Ijaz Mia imagine that all those beautiful hours of sharing and chatting, the light teasing and laughter over little things of life, the exchange of news and lending support and shoulder during hours of grief and death with friends from the villages of the Basaks and the Hawks, of Siddiqui and Saha, would ever be interpreted this way. The men didn't give Badal a chance to speak and explain. A few of them held him back while the machete dug through his stomach and slit it sideways, ripping his insides apart. Badal screamed, but his energy was already draining. What he emitted was merely a hoarse, faint grunt, calling out to Firdaus and Asman. Firdaus was his wife and Asman his son, which of course didn't at all carry to Maligarh, from where Asman was returning at that time. The machete then struck his head, and when the men released him, Badal instantly dropped to the ground. Firdaus came rushing out of the house, hearing all the commotion, but Badal did not get to see her. They had already killed him. When she saw the men and then saw Badal lying under the gulmohar tree like a slaughtered lamb, she didn't know which way to go. She cried to come to Badal, and at the same time she knew she had to run back into the house if she was to escape the men's fury. And before she could decide, one of the men pounced on her, dragged her out under the tree by the hair, and banged her head again and again against the hard trunk of the gulmohar, shouting each time, "Tell us, you witch, where is that son of yours? Tell us." He isn't home was all she managed to groan. Not home, you say? Take that, he said, banging her head again on the tree trunk. A few gulmohar flowers dropped on her as the lower branches shook. At last, when she collapsed, they left her lying on the ground to die. Some of them went into the shop, ransacked it, and stormed into the house looking for Asman. When they couldn't find him, they vent their wrath on the shop and set it on fire, and into that fire they threw Ijaz Mia's bench, the same bench that stood as a silent witness through the chronicle of grief and longing, birth and death, hope and despair, and most of all, through the search of an identity of the nameless Hazrat Gandhis. Like an omen of the times to come, the bench was burned to ashes.
This is very, very riveting. It is.
Just before, Stuti, please let me. Yeah, I have to thank you all for giving me such a patient ear, and I'm kind of choking. This is my first public reading, and in front of someone I really love and someone who is an extended family for me. Maybe I have been visiting this place even before some of you joined it. And I am overwhelmed at this moment. Thank you for hearing this passage, and thank you for allowing me to read it in front of you. Thank you so much.
Well, ma'am, thank you for coming over here. And this is definitely one novel I am looking forward to, and I think a lot of us are definitely going to read it for sure. It was actually very riveting. I'll be very honest with you, especially the latter passage was like, yeah. So thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with us. And we actually come to the end of our interaction, and I hand the microphone, albeit figuratively, over to Joynal.
Thank you, Sudhi ma'am.
Can I please tell one more thing? And see, this is not, because I have kids your age or maybe older than you, that's why I really want to tell you that please, creativity is not just for fiction writers or English language. Creativity can also be for doctors and engineers and everyone in the technical field. I have a daughter who is a doctor, and I tell everyone that she also needs to be creative because she needs to ask from her patients what their ailments are, what their complaints are. And if she is not taking history properly, they call it history taking. If she isn't doing it very creatively, there will be patients who will not be divulging all the complaints, which will affect the treatment. If you have a massive project, you are a brilliant engineer, you are a brilliant technocrat, a bureaucrat, a diplomat, whatever, you have a brilliant project, but you don't have the proper expression and the creative skills to present that to your seniors to get the project passed, such brilliance is, futile. Which is why I really, every time, whenever I go to talk to someone, I tell, please kids, this is not about only telling lies or fiction writing. This is for everything, for lawyers, for everyone. Even while cooking, even while cleaning the house, even while taking your dog for a stroll, you need some amount of creativity. You have loads and loads and loads of it. You kids have it more than us. Give it a push. Will you? Will you?
Yes, for sure.
Yes,
Will
ma'am,
you?
For sure. Yes, ma'am.
Louder, yes. I am on Instagram, I am on Facebook. Get in touch with me if you want any kind of telling lies tips. I am there. But give your creativity a push. You have the potential and you have the privilege, you have the opportunity. Give it a go. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. In fact, yes, actually, I was thinking of asking if you would have any message for our students in here, but the message already has been conveyed. So thank you so much.
Stuti isn't as old as I am, so that's why she doesn't know how to handle kids your age, because she doesn't have kids this age. That's why.
Yes, yes, of course.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.